This is a Pele Media podcast.
Welcome back to Goonies Minute, everybody. Goonies Minute is the fan podcast where we carefully explore the movie Goonies minute by minute. This is Brady.
And this is Chris.
And we are joined today by a very, very special guest, Mr. John Robert Wilson of the Fifth Element podcast. John, thank you so much for coming on today. How you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So why the Fifth Element? Why did you guys choose to go with that one?
Well, Crystal had just gotten into the whole movies by minutes sort of scene, or she was still just discovering it. And she was guesting on a lot of things. She had just finished doing Alien Minute and Back to the Future Minute. And I, as just from being next to her, started reading about all the movies and getting into all the lore of each movie as she recorded for each one. And we were on a date one night, and we ended up at this place called Whiskey Town, which is in the East Village in New York City. Great place for picklebacks. We were doing pickleback shots. And they play movies in this small little bar, little hole-in-the-wall place. It's a great place. And they put on The Fifth Element. And we were watching it, and they had it on mute because it was a bar and they had music playing. And there wasn't a lot of people there, though. So we were, like, saying the movie as they were doing it, and they didn't have subtitles on. And we were having such a fun time watching it. We're like, oh, John, maybe we should do a minute-by-minute podcast. And, I've been doing podcasting for a really long time. I mean, I started doing podcasting when I moved here to New York City, did something that's called The Terrible Red Show, that's now defunct, and another podcast called Here to Help, which is now defunct. And I helped create CaveComedyRadio.com, which is a podcast network that records out of Queens here in New York City. So I kind of knew all the sort of technical stuff with making a podcast, and so I was like, and Crystal sort of had the connections and the wonderful personality to, make something like a minute-by-minute podcast really fun to do, just like you guys have really charming and entertaining personalities and banter. And so we were like, oh, man, The Fifth Element, it's The Fifth Element. The second we said The Fifth Element, the
like
title
that's
was so
reason
good.
enough.
Yeah, I literally got on my phone and bought the domain right there.
Awesome.
And the rest was just leading up to getting some episodes recorded, and we bought a bunch of recording equipment and learned a lot of stuff along the way and got better recording equipment, and yeah, here we are.
And here we are. Well, if there was ever a movie that deserved this kind of treatment, I think The Fifth Element is definitely one of them. And you guys are doing a hell of a job. And like you said, it's all about personality, and you guys have just amazing personalities. And I'm sure part of that stems from doing stand-up comedy, which both of you do in New York.
Yeah, that's how we met. We're both quote-unquote comedians. But she does more stand-up than I do right now. But we both now are doing so much podcasting. That's sort of been our primary creative push as of late. But I still do regular shows. I have an improv group that I've been a part of with a regular show here in New York City for 10 years. The group's called Thank You Robot. We have a monthly show down in the East Village as well. And both of us are trained via the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, and
awesome.
We met at a comedy festival, and one thing led to another, and I started going to all of her shows. She started going to my shows, and then we started hanging out more. And then I kept on asking her out when she was free, until it started bothering her until she finally agreed to go on a date with me, and that's all she wrote.
And then The Fifth Element.
Then The Fifth Element.
Three in a family.
Go check it out if you love the Movies by Minutes maven, Crystal Beth. It's at www.thefifthelement.com. It's also on iTunes, just like this wonderful podcast is.
That's an awesome title.
This is the perfect title.
Yeah. So, okay, Chris, you might not have known this, but John is actually LSU alumni from right here in our
I
hometown.
remember Crystal said that, and because we talked about
Cane's.
a couple different places.
Cane's, good old Cane's Chicken Fingers, which is a Baton Rouge.
I wanted
staple.
to say to the listeners, Brady mailed me and Crystal some Cane's koozies, so it was a nice little throwback of nostalgia here in New York City now.
Well, hey, you know what? You might need to franchise Cane's up there.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would take off. Well, I tell you what, I definitely want to get a little bit further into or discuss your comedy career a little bit more. But you're going to be with us up until minute number 97 next week. So,
I'm here for the long haul, baby.
Until then, why don't we go ahead and get into minute number 93?
Yeah, let's
do it.
In the previous minute, Ma was threatening Mouth with the sword. Andy jumped to his defense, but not before Ma turned her sword to Andy. At minute 93, Ma ushers Andy closer to the plank with her sword. Francis and Jake hold the other Goonies back to watch as Andy is slowly pushed further and further to the edge of the plank. Andy cries out for Brand just as Ma swats her in the face with her sword. Andy falls back and drops into the water. Brand pushes himself free and runs to the end of the plank. He dives headfirst into the water. Brand swims down and finds Andy and pulls her up to the surface. Francis brings Mouth and Steph out to the end of the plank. Ma raises her sword, but before she can do them in, the entire cave echoes with Sloth's voice. Everyone looks up to the highest point of the sails to see Sloth and Chunk. Sloth shoves a knife into the sail, and Chunk grabs a hold of him. The knife tears through the sail as they safely land on the deck. Sloth takes a rope and swings out across the deck and grabs Mouth and Steph off the plank. And thus ends minute 93 of The Goonies. So, you know, we're watching The Goonies, which is a pirate film at its core, but like you don't get much more pirate movie than you do here in this scene. You know, everything from obviously the set piece to the music, but you get your villain with a sword pushing one of your heroes out onto the plank, and she's even talking like a pirate. The way she sounds, she kind of has that classic pirate movie sound.
Yeah. But you still know it's Anne Ramsey, though.
Yeah, you still know who it is.
You want to play pirate?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, Chris, whenever we did our Patreon episode where we discussed our top 3 favorite pirate films, I can't remember which one it was, but you said that the actor in it, as far as you were concerned when you were a kid, was an actual pirate.
What was that? Was my third movie?
Was it Treasure Island?
Was that Redbeard maybe or something? I can't even remember.
I can't remember, but
it was something from the 50s.
Yeah,
I just cannot remember what. It's like that's terrible. Is that I had a whole write up on that movie.
But
or was it Blackbeard?
Was it Blackbeard?
Was it Blackbeard?
I can't remember.
But he was an actual. Yeah, the guy was an actual pirate.
As far as you were concerned at the time.
Yeah, no, I read that, and
yeah,
no, he really was. No, but no, he just seemed like the classic pirate.
It was so he inhibited like all of those just characteristics, everything from R and just his every mannerism.
Yeah, a certain
I would think we
hat.
Would get our modern stereotypical definition of a pirate from Blackbeard.
Certain hat, certain beard, a certain way they carry themselves, a certain machismo that they have, bravado, you know, to be able to lead a group of people. It's really uncanny, but that's what I think of when I think of the classics. And stereotypical pirate.
She's doing all of that right here. Just to a T. So the movie really does take on all of those classic pirate characteristics.
And real quick, you know, from the beginning of this movie, her sons have been buffoons, but she has always stayed focused. She has been stone-faced, emotionless.
Ruthless.
Yeah, ruthless.
Yeah, and here she is being just as goofy as the rest of the gang, so...
Well, she's winning.
Yeah, that's true.
She's finally able to let loose. Like, she's got everybody where she wants them to be. She's mama. She wants everyone in their place. And right now, these kids' places, or at least Andy's place, is off the plank.
So, yeah, Andy goes off the plank, and... You know, Brand has to jump in after her, and everything has just hit the fan.
Hey, I have a quick question.
Okay.
I have a couple questions here. All right. First of all, John, I don't know if you've heard parts that we've talked about is how Mikey has this crush on Andy, and there's a couple times in the movie that Andy, other than the kiss, has shown that affection back towards Mikey, and at least when Andy was about to jump off or be forced off the plank, that she yelled for Brand and not Mikey. And at least Brand is the one that went after her and not Mikey, because that would have really been interesting. We could have had a whole other side part of this.
Yeah, we get, in one of the upcoming minutes, Brand and Andy finally have their kiss, and I've got some issues on, which I've already kind of gone over in a previous minute, how the whole Mikey and Andy thing shouldn't have happened. That should have been Brand and Andy to give Brand a little bit more character growth, which he just doesn't have in this movie.
Well, think of it like this. Let's swap the genders for a second and put yourself in Andy's shoes. Let's say Andy is a guy, and you have two sisters, a younger sister and the sister that you're dating.
Uh-huh.
I mean, let's say like, you know, and both of them were cute, you know, and let's say like, oh, you accidentally just kissed the younger sister, but you didn't know. You're not going to, like, hate yourself, are you?
Depending on how hot she is. So.
Right. So my thinking is that Andy thinks both of them, since they're from the same stock, are equally attractive, and she thinks it's kind of cute that she's like, oh, whoops, I accidentally kissed Mikey.
So you think she might have been onto it the whole time? She might have known what she was doing? But, hey, it's dark.
Yeah.
I didn't see.
Yeah. I don't know how she couldn't have seen. I've talked about that.
Yeah.
Maybe she's just a saucy lady,
It might have been. And
Hey, I've another thing. Can either one of you swim with your hands tied?
I've never tried.
Yes.
I think I could.
Really?
I think I could have tread water with my hands tied.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're kicking hard enough.
So it's not like that she's being thrown overboard into shark-infested waters, but I think it's comical the fear they have of walking this plank and the contradiction that you'll have, even though I'm jumping ahead of myself, when everybody else easily jumps off later and think that's an escape. So you go from, oh my gosh, we're going to be pushed off the plank, oh no, to everybody running off the plank in a little bit when Chunk comes, when Sloth comes.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all noticed that.
Have you ever, like, dived, from that high? Like, dive,
I just think other than just at a swimming pool, the high diving board,
Yeah.
nothing anything crazy. I'd be too chicken to do that.
John, what about you?
Well, yeah, I've dived that high before. I used to be on the swim team when I was back in Louisiana, and it hurts if you don't do it correctly.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say, too, like, only her wrists are tied, so not only can she tread water by kicking, but she can move her elbows and cup
Yeah.
her
That's
true.
up and
That's
down
true.
to, like, help her. So it's not like her arms are completely immobilized.
Like the dog paddle or whatever.
Yeah, doggy
she's
paddle.
fine.
I love the doggy paddle. When I go swim,
Uh-huh.
just swimming around in a pool, I'm doggy
That's all you
paddling,
can do.
man.
There you go.
Is there anything more iconic? I'm sure there is, but there's not much than the "Hey, you guys."
Oh,
I know.
What an iconic!
I'm so
line.
glad you guys let me join you guys for this minute, because
Yes.
this is the line of the movie.
It really is.
All right, come on, give me your best one, guys.
Oh,
take
here we go,
turns.
Chris.
Hey, you guys!
John, go for it.
Hey, you guys!
That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
That's a pretty good one there.
Yeah. I can't remember who our guest was that we had on, a while back. But he was
Brady.
talking about
Brady.
Yes, sir.
Do you think you're going to weasel your way out of doing this?
Shit, I was trying.
Yeah.
Here we go.
He's a coward.
Hold on, here we
He's
go.
a coward when he
Do
comes
it.
to that kind of stuff.
Do it.
Hey, you guys! And that is why I leave it to the experts.
No, that was
So-
great. That was great.
I try. But no, I can't. Chris, who was the guest that we had on who was saying that he was in a film studies class and the teacher asked everybody what their favorite movie was, and everyone was talking about like French New Wave titles and things like this, and some girl very timidly raised her hand and said The Goonies, and the entire class erupts with "Hey, you guys," and it's so when Chris says it's iconic, it's you could say that anywhere and people are they're going to get it. It's like a communal thing. Everybody knows that line.
It's a pillar of our collective culture, if you will.
I like it.
Absolutely. I mean, even people that haven't watched it probably know that line, that it's from or a lot of them do.
Yeah.
It's.
You get some things like Forget It, Jake, it's Chinatown or Rosebud.
Yeah.
And then you also get Sloth screaming, hey, you guys.
I think it also signifies a turning point in the movie where Chunk now has harvested the superpower that is Sloth and learned to control him for the betterment of the Goonies, right? So this
Right.
whole time they've been just shitting on Chunk, but now Chunk is the hero,
Yeah.
the proxy of Sloth.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just gets more, like I was saying at the beginning of the minute, it's become like a full-fledged classic pirate movie. Well, it's the cherry on the top is Captain Chunk. We get that moment with the way what happens to the music at that moment.
Okay, I caught a mistake when Francis has his arms around both Steph and Mouth when he's dragging him to the end of the plank. At first, you see Mouth is holding Francis's arm, which is around his neck, and his hands aren't tied, but Steph's are. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the plank, when you flash back and see them again at the end of the plank, Mouth's hands are tied. Her
Yep.
wrists are tied.
You
So I
see
thought that was funny.
some continuity errors here and there, especially in this scene. But who freaking cares? Look where we are, you know.
Well, that's why we do the minute breakdown, to be able to find things like that.
Yeah, point out all the flaws.
Yeah, and you can tell his hands aren't tied because he reaches. His hands go out across his sides as he reaches up to grab the hand that's holding his head.
Hey, what about that knife slide that like where he sticks the knife in the
I've always
in the
wanted to do
sail?
that.
I mean, that is just. I just wonder if that would.
You know,
That could be a death sentence right there.
you see, like, where would Sloth have
was
gotten
cool.
that idea? And then
Well,
we remember
we
back
know,
to where, he was watching Captain Blood, being forced to watch this classic pirate film. So,
Don't they show that exact scene in Captain Blood? I'm almost
think-
positive we see
yeah,
something with that knife. in
if
Captain Blood.
it's not that, then it's just stuff like that. And so that's where Sloth would have had, like, the thought to do something that I don't think someone in Sloth's condition would normally think to do. But
Wait, you don't think he's a brilliant man?
yeah, exactly, you know.
Well, or maybe Chunk. They
Whispering
brainstormed before.
Yeah.
They were watching this.
Probably.
They were watching the scene from the distance and looking at all the possibilities of
Yeah.
the best way to get onto that ship.
That's probably what happened. But with that said, does anybody have anything else for this minute?
No, that just Sloth is a super weapon being used at its maximum potential right now. It's great.
Awesome.
Where's the octopus when they were in the water? Huh?
That's right. John, are you familiar with this?
No, what's going on with the octopus?
Okay, so there was a
Okay,
deleted
good.
scene. Yeah, there's a deleted scene where right after the Goonies spot the pirate ship and they're kind of making their way over to it, some tentacles go by Steph's legs, and she thinks it's Mouth messing with her, and turns out it's a big octopus. Well, this awful-looking octopus animatronic pops up out of the water and is wrapping its tentacles around them. Data takes, like, a Walkman, like, cassette player, of course, and turns it on and takes it underwater and shoves it into the octopus's, like, beak or whatever, and then the octopus pops up out of the water and starts breakdancing. And it, like, floats, I swear to God,
Thank
and it's on
God.
YouTube. Yeah, anyway, that's the story of the octopus.
Oh my gosh, I had
So-
no idea. I'm
Yeah,
so
you've
glad
got to go
they
see
didn't
that
do that.
deleted scene. You've got to go
Yeah,
see that.
it's pretty
on
awful.
YouTube.
It reminds me of the new Ghostbusters movie where they had that big choreographed dance scene in the most inappropriate place. I'm glad they cut it out, but it's going to be in the extended edition or whatever on DVD. But there was like this whole him and haw about the dance numbers making it not being inappropriate in the movie and
Yeah.
them having to take it out because it was such a big controversy.
Well, they might
So
have
this
made the right
octopus,
decision.
yeah, was
It might have been.
equally as big as a travesty as that, I guess.
Exactly. Maybe. Okay, well, I guess that's it for minute number 93. John, where can people find you online and even out in New York doing your thing?
I am on Twitter at John Robert Wilso, and every third Friday of the month, I am part of a improv group called Thank You Robot, where we do an improv show called Science Exclamation Point, where we break down science lectures from accredited professors that we have give 5-minute lectures about their area of expertise. And as you mentioned at the top of the show, I am a part of the podcast The Fifth Element with the lovely Crystal Beth. And me and her are also on another podcast about video games called Unlimited Lives Radio. All those are on iTunes.
All right. Well, we will have you back here tomorrow, and that is going to be for minute number 94. But until then, this is Brady,
And this is Chris.
and we're here to remind you that Goonies
Never say
die. Goonies Minute is a fan-supported podcast. If you like the show, then leave us a review on iTunes. You can find us at GooniesMinute.com, Facebook.com/GooniesMinute, Twitter.com/GooniesMinute, and at Instagram at GooniesMinute. You can contact us at GooniesMinute@gmail.com. You've been listening to a Pele Media podcast. For premium content and exclusive podcasts, visit us at patreon.com/Pele Media. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Pele Media and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/Pele Media.